Okay. Okay. All right. Webinar is now active and being recorded and streamed. So if we're okay, the first committee is planning and zoning.
Yes, I'm fine, Steve, yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Just a couple of quick things from manager. Last time I mentioned to you that the only item from the capital improvements plan for this committee is the comprehensive plan spending. I don't remember if we came to a decision, but I'm pretty sure that this is something we want to move forward with, if I'm not mistaken. But I wasn't sure, so I wanted to put it on here one more time, that should be included in the capital plan. Is that acceptable? Anybody have any objection, I guess?
I don't,
No?
yeah,
Okay, the only other, I mean, the outstanding items I have are just reminders. There's no updates there at all. Everything is the same as last month. And then, with land development, LSSE, did, mention, that they had issued letters. They mentioned this last month too, for the review of the subway restaurant zoning. I know that Dave Naylor had been handling that, but he is, he's having some procedure done, so he's out for a while. I believe that the Anna from Mr. Corbell's office was also aware of that, and I'm pretty sure it's being handled fine and there's no problem with it, but I wanted to let you know that LSSE had brought that up again. Does it, Mr. Corbell, do you know if there's any issues with that?
Yeah, it's good to go, Steve. As far as I'm concerned, Dave, I think, was supposed to issue the zoning permit before he went out. So it's really, again, they're just retrofitting an existing space. So
Okay.
not much from a land development perspective there.
Okay, so we are good. There's nothing the council has to do with that then, just informational. And you know, I
Correct.
guess Subway is going into the old Howard Hanna building. They moved from the Hoffman Parkway Center building. Well, they will move anyway. That's all I have unless someone has a question for me.
okay, thank you, Steve.
You're welcome.
Don, you have something for us?
Yeah, the trees that had died in the median were scheduled to be replaced today. So hopefully everything went well and they are in the ground. As far as the ads go for the pruning and removal bids, that they ran for 2 weeks in the Post Gazette and the Valley Mirror. So hopefully this year we're going to get more bidders than we got in the past, but I can't say that we will. The next meeting that we have with Tree and Shrub will be a special meeting to open bids. It's November the 8th. And that's when we open the bids because our arborist had some serious problems and he couldn't get with me and to get things handled. And the next meeting for Tree and Shrub will be February. I'm sorry. We don't meet in December or November, December, and January. So that's about all I have.
Okay,
I
thanks,
have a
Don.
question, please.
Yes, Barb.
Mr. Branzel, do we have any information on the mysterious pin oaks that suddenly appeared in the main park?
I do. I called Scott from Joseph B. Fay Company yesterday, and he says they are not replacing those trees. He said that they would replace what was there. So that's all that I know. He said,
Okay,
if you want,
well, then we don't want pin oaks there. So they're just the wrong tree for that area.
right, but there's
They're
no
going to have
wires,
to come out.
no electricity wires there, so we can get our arborist to remove them and put a tree in that we desire.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay, thanks, Don. Under the
Wait.
committee business report,
Just one
Uh,
question.
I
Yes,
just had a question
yeah,
beyond
yeah,
that.
oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Can we move,
Yes,
can we move
yes.
those pin oak trees to some other appropriate area in the park someplace?
Yes, we can.
Well, that
Patty,
would be,
we decided not to use pin oaks because of the cost for taking one down for the height. In addition, the diseases that are now coming for pin oaks.
so what would we do with the ones that are there?
That's a good question.
Angelo, did you have something to say?
Yes, I wanted to ask about, this came up in, last week about, the problem with the trees that, we have in the parks, that are old and may be diseased, that, we need to get an arborist, a certified arborist to go around and identify those that might be, in danger of falling. And so we need to do that as soon as possible.
I will arrange that.
Okay. Under the committee business report area, I've been talking to public safety about Ardmore Boulevard. It's a really bad place for our businesses right now with the speed going down. I'm talking to SPC, Southwestern Pennsylvania Regional Planning Commission. I've known them for about 20 years. They can do something with Ardmore because they are responsible for the traffic lights and the activities at Ardmore. So I'll be working with them to see what we can do. There are some ideas that have come across. Angelo and I have talked about some things, but I think that that main highway needs to have some attention because it's getting faster and faster. I was coming down trying to do 35 and a guy almost pushed me off the road where he was doing 60. So it's getting really bad. Any comments about it?
Can you share some of the possible solutions in your discussions?
Yes, I can. I'll be meeting with them. Well, it's my customer. I can meet with them anytime I want to, but I'll be talking with them on an ongoing basis, especially a gentleman by the name of Dominic DeAndres. He represents from the state through SPC the discipline necessary for the Ardmore traffic light changing and how they can put together any type of barriers if necessary. They can do that. They have the right to do that for the state. So I'll be talking with them to see what we can do because we've got to do something with that highway. I mean, it is getting faster and faster. Any more comments about Ardmore or any around the areas? Okay, all right. Then Steve, we're done.
Okay. Finance Committee is up next. And okay, I'm fine to start that if we're okay, Ms. DeMarco. You're muted. Is it okay to start?
yes, you have a considerable amount to discuss, and I would ask the council to respectfully hold questions until Mr. Morris has gone through his budget presentation, and then we can have discussion in sections after that, okay?
Okay, well, let me start with the cash flow first because I've been giving you negative comments in the last few months, and this current cash flow is very much of a positive entering October. So I wanted to make sure you were aware of that, and just in case, this is the graph, the chart that I use to show how it compares with recent years, with the red line being this year. And while it's not great, it's much, much better. And if this trend continues, we should be okay. through the end of the year as far as cash is concerned. I don't want to guarantee that because next month could end up being a problem, but I don't foresee that. And you can see by looking at the chart and comparing the numbers from the recent years in this September section here. Whoops. Well, I guess not. September right here. You can see that last year was very low. The other years, though, were fairly comparable with this year, and this year is not bad at all. Yeah, and exiting September, entering October. So you still, I think, should be careful. Is everyone seeing that on the screen? Because I'm not sure what's
Yeah.
being shared right now.
We can
Okay.
see you and you can see your
Okay,
mouse.
good. All right. I was having some problem with it when I was setting things up before. Anyway, I would, if you still want to consider the suggestions I made in September to return some cash to general fund, you may want to discuss that, and we'll do that in November. I did have Jimmy do a quick look at the hours they have spent on sewer issues that could come out of corrective action, and probably could reimburse the general fund through I think the end of September for about $8,000 to $10,000 if you wanted to, for the salary work, the work they put in on sewers. That was just one example of some things I had told
And
you
what
about
about
when
corrective action? What about corrective action? The same?
That's would be coming from corrective action.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. I forget what I was going to say.
Paving.
Anyway, there were some other things I suggested to you, and I'm actually a couple of them we're probably going to talk about when I talk about the budget in a minute here. So we can just wait till then if you want, Mr. Erbaldinger.
Can I ask just to squeeze in Walt? Walt sent us all those tables about pool revenue to compare 2022, 2023. I don't see him on the agenda, but if you can squeeze him in before the budget.
Oh, that's fine. I put him on committee of the whole for other items.
So he doesn't have to wait the whole time.
Yeah, I don't have any, I didn't get his email yet, so I don't know. Does he have, Walt, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Do you want to talk about something? I guess
He sent it to us. You were copied on it. I can maybe share my screen. Walt, can you share your screen? Are you able to do that?
Do I have the ability to share?
You should. I can do it if you want.
Yeah, I don't.
I just gave everybody the ability to share.
Hold on, let me pull it up here.
I just want to be respectful of your time, so squeeze him in.
Sorry, guys, I'm pulling it up right now. Let me just get over to it and come back over to the Zoom and hit share screen for you guys. It doesn't seem like it's letting me share my screen. Marcus, are you able to share that?
I can. Which one you want to do first?
The Excel spreadsheet.
All right.
Oh, wait, it might have just let me in. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Sorry, it was just delayed on the school's thing. So I pulled up the, obviously we've been working on the 2023 budget, 2024 budget projected, and the 2025. What I did is I just added a column to do a comparison against the 2022 actuals. This is for the pool and Westinghouse Lodge permits, pool sponsorships. You can see it, and I'm sorry that it came out so late, but was trying to get some things ironed out and some final numbers from Allison, and she was away. But as you see, we're on the plus side of everything from 2022 to 2023, with the only negative that was out there was the pool sponsorships, and that's our members from outside of the borough. Obviously, this was my first summer at the pool, so I can't get a full grasp on why that was the only number that dropped. But as you can see, everything across the board, everything in yellow was a positive number. Actually, I missed the $100 on the ball field permits, and as I found out, that's actually an error. We placed $100 somewhere else, so it should have actually been equal on this one. So the only thing that was a negative on this 2022 to 2023 P&L that I did was the pool sponsorships. You'll notice concessions as an example. We were $11,000 higher than we were in 2022. The nice part about that, and there was another email that was just sent, Marcus said that he hadn't seen it yet, so I sent it over to you guys. And that was the cost incurred. We were up about $2,000 in cost. That was almost 100% because of the cost of merchandise and supplies for the concession stand. Just about everything that we purchased for the concession was marked up dramatically. So it cost us about $2,000 on the year as a whole. But the switch over to the credit cards and what have you, pretty much shows you that, that we can pull higher profits out of that concession stand. I think, there's bigger and better things to come as we move forward. And now, it took at least a month before people really knew what that was all about and started switching over. At this point, and I don't have all the specifics in front of me right now, but the credit cards were about 40% of our net sales when it was all said and done. So that is something that as a whole we can, and I don't know if that just paused my screen or not. I think it may have. I apologize for that, but bottom line is, if I pull up the budget worksheet for the swimming pool itself, bear with me here. Let me get this open. And I'll share that as soon as I can here. New share. Share. Obviously, the wages, went way up. Part of that is obviously my wages. Marcus, myself, and Allison met as to how it was to be divvied up between Westinghouse and the pool. Going down the line items, we were able to, stay in good with equipment and what have you. There are a few purchases that we need to make as we push forward. We need a new freezer. The ice machine broke the last week of the season, and we used the Westinghouse ice machine to stock that for the last week rather than buying ice, and a couple other little items there. Chemicals were way down. I'm not sure why that is. I don't know whether we had a stockpile coming into the year or not, but everything else pretty much stayed status quo. You'll see the concession stands supplies at $19,684, which, like I said, was up about $2,500, $2,600 over last year. But a lot of the items we were able to keep down, and I'm not sure why that keeps shrinking on me. Let me get that back up where you guys can see it. And what you need to do at that point is just see the totals. But like I said, everything, I personally believe we're in a good place with that. The one thing that you'll notice right here is the sewage. That is something that we're still waiting for the final bill. Usually that comes in August or September. That we've been on a credit all of 2023. And so Ann's working to try to track down that number for us as to what that last bill is going to be. But we are expecting it to be rather large simply because of the water issues we had at the pool and what have you. But like I said, that is up. So if there's any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer anything.
No,
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yes,
yeah, we can
Walt.
hear.
Yes.
Okay, Walt, would it be possible to talk with Pinjoint Water and explain the water leak that we had? That should mitigate the sewer bill, getting an outrageous sewer bill. I know a lot of times when people have leaks in their homes, they do make accommodations for that.
And I'll check on that, Mr. Watkins. I know in talking to Allison and Ann, I don't believe that it fully affects. I think there's something in place, and maybe someone here can tell me different. It's something that I was just made aware of, that there might be things in place that the water that's drained out of the pool doesn't go towards our sewage. Does anybody know that answer? That is something I'm still working to get the details on from the water company.
I think you have to make a really good solid point that your water, you have to almost prove that your water didn't go in the sewage, and then they let you off the hook. But it's definitely worth a try.
I'm not sure I'm following. The
When you dump the
water
water-
authority has nothing to do with water going into the sewage, it's just water coming out of the water authority.
But the water authority uses, the meter from the pool, from the water authority is used to determine the sewage cost.
Right,
So if you, for the sewage bill, if you prove that the water didn't actually go into the sewage, I think you can get off. But I'm not sure what the process for that is.
But when you empty the pool, doesn't that go into some place that would go into the sewer cost?
Yes, but not the water leakage. We had water leakage from the pool. So that, but yeah, I don't know. It's something we should investigate.
I will look into it. Like I said, Ann and Allison and I have been working over the at the end of last week to, like I said, we were trying to determine for this meeting or for this week to get these numbers, and that is something that's still up in the air. But I will follow up with that to see if there's any kind of restitution we can get for the leaking water. I don't know that we can necessarily prove how much we were leaking, but see what is out there. And I mean, I've been in sales most of my life, so I'll definitely give it the effort.
So can I think, Walt, if I'm not mistaken, there should be an auxiliary meter that you can apply for the pool, which would solve that problem, but you need to talk to somebody there. And if you're running up against the problem, let me know. We'll figure out a way to talk to the appropriate person at Wilk Pinjoint Water Authority. But I'm pretty confident that in cases like that, there's an actual auxiliary meter that you can apply for that would kind of do away with the sewage surcharge based on consumption.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hey, I think that's it for Walt. So sorry for interrupting, but
Okay.
I wanted to be conscious of Walt's time, so you don't have to stay anymore, Walt.
I actually think there's other things on the agenda for me, so.
Okay. So
okay. So back to cash flow. Did anybody else have any questions about that? I wanted to point out one note I had on there for cash flow, because I still have people kind of saying things like this to me. When you're looking at the budget, especially when you're looking at the treasurer's monthly reports, and you look at a particular line item, for example, water, and you think that maybe you've only spent $5,000 of a $10,000 budget on water, just realize that that money is not necessarily there for sure, especially at this time of year as revenues begin to go down. So when you are spending money now because you think there's money left in a budget line item, you may be mistaken depending on how the overall budget looks. I don't know if I'm being clear, because it seems like a lot of people still don't get that. And I'm not exactly sure why, but I just wanted to mention that again, and I'd be happy to go over it with anybody some other time, so we're not taking your time up now in committee. Did anybody else have any questions from regarding cash flow? Because I'm going to go into the budget right now, but first, because let me change my screen here. The 2024 budget and capital improvements plan first draft has been given out to everybody via email. You probably saw my email earlier. this morning, and just to briefly repeat, I realize you're just getting a look at this for the first time now. I'm not expecting you to be experts. I did not expect you to read this the last 8 or 10 hours of your day. This is something that you need to look at after I give my introduction here and explain what I did and why. And then give me your comments tonight or between now and the next meeting or at the meeting on the 25th or for the Finance Committee meeting in November, because that's when you have to come up with a preliminary budget to vote on in November. So I realize there's a lot of information there. What I'm going to try to do is summarize it as best I can using a brief PowerPoint presentation, assuming this will work on sharing the screen. And hopefully everybody can see. Whoops.
We can see it.
The slideshow. Can you see?
Yes.
Is the full screen is white then? With
No,
black
we
lettering.
see your screen, you're where you see the next slide.
Yeah,
you don't-
they're not supposed to do that. Okay.
It was right before.
Let's see if this works. How's that?
Yeah, perfect.
That's great.
Okay. All right, good. So this is just highlights from my budget message. You know, my budget message is very long. And while some people, I think in the past have thought my budget message was long to confuse everybody, it's not. It's my attempt to try to explain different things in the budget. And I over the years, I feel like sometimes I failed in doing that because people still have a lot of things that I don't have included in the budget that they're questioning. But all I'm concentrating on right now is the general fund budget. The other budgets I gave you are other ones that you can look at and you should consider for approval, but the only one that has to be approved is this general fund budget, okay? So a summary of all the budgets I gave you, the only exception being the corrective action. I'm working on corrective action with LSSE, as we used to do with Glenn in the past. And I just got something from them earlier today, but I did not have time to review it and put it together. So I'll get you that hopefully in the next few weeks and in time for the Finance Committee meeting in November. But the general fund budget for this year, the first draft is 6.9 million, slightly less than what our final budget was for 2023. The road improvement, you can see, you can read all those: road improvement, liquid fuels, fire services fee, and the capital improvements plan for 2024 only is a little over $1 million. Again, the general fund, though, my budget for this year is a slight decrease compared with 2023. I balanced this budget without a tax increase. I'm saying that because there are a few people I told them you know, I'm not speaking correct English today, and I apologize. I don't know what the heck. Maybe it's the medicine I'm taking for this allergy and cold combination that I have. I've said to some people in the recent past, that I was almost sure I was gonna have to recommend a tax increase. I didn't want to do that necessarily. So let me explain to you how I balanced the budget without a tax increase, because you may not be happy with some of the things I did. While the assessment issue is a problem, I showed that real estate tax dollars are going to increase. Now, the appeal process for us almost always shows our total assessed value going up when someone appeals or when the school district appeals. It almost always shows the homeowner, the property owner, losing the appeal. If you're a property owner that's lost an appeal, that's not good, of course, but oops, sorry. As far as the borough is concerned, that does benefit us from a tax perspective. So I did put in what I estimated for based on the current total assessed value, which I'll get to. The earned income tax continues to increase. The unemployment rate is lower, and it appears that earned income tax is going to continue to go up. Cable TV franchise have been going down. but they haven't been going down as fast as I first thought, so I kept that pretty much status quo. The RAD tax revenues continue to increase, and the pension reserve money that we have left is being used in 2024 budget to fund the obligation we will have toward pensions. So there will be nothing left in a pension reserve later. Now, before you panic about that, realize that the pension reserve was just something temporarily set up because we had 4 years from 2015 through 2018, I believe it was, where we only had to put in 75% of our obligation, knowing that down the road we'd have to make up that 25%. But our budget was fine and our finances were fine. So we took that 25% and we banked it in a pension reserve fund. So we would get some interest on it, et cetera, and then use that once that 4-year period was done to pay the difference that we knew was going to come. So when I say the pension reserve will probably be used up after the 2024 budget, it's not necessarily a negative. We never had that before. It was only because we had that savings from the rule that had happened for those 4 years. And if that's not clear, I'll be happy to explain that further. Does anybody have any questions? Again, my revenues are more optimistic than I normally make them. That was one reason why I was able to balance without a tax increase. Everybody okay with my explanation so far? Okay, in expenses, I looked at a number of different things. Legal services projects to be lower than what we estimated, so I lowered that for 2024. Police salaries declined due to retirements and new hires, so that benefited the budget. I eliminated the neighborhood crime resistance and auxiliary police funding. Public works salaries are also estimated somewhat lower, as we have those past employees that have been on medical leave that are probably not going to be covered any longer. I only increased tree maintenance slightly, which is probably not good because we've been talking about that as a problem over the years, but I only increased it by a couple of $1,000s. The senior center costs will be eliminated. They are eliminated in this budget. I assume that sale will happen relatively soon and be completed. The Forest Hills Lodge, the Recreation Lodge, will be under construction. So that means we'll have a few less expenses there, normal, regular expenses from general fund. Obviously, there'll be some capital spending, but not normal, regular spending on the lodge. Debt service costs have stabilized. Last year, there was a big increase in debt service payments that we owed, but as the years go on, that debt service kind of gets a little bit more even. You can take a look at the debt service, by the way, in the budget book or on the website. I do have that chart there so you can see what it is. And on miscellaneous items like contingencies, budget reserve, and a few other things, I significantly reduced those. I'll explain budget reserve in a few minutes, but for example, I did not put anything into capital reserve. So that is how I balance without a tax increase. Does anybody have any questions so far?
I have a number of questions, but I'll hold until the end.
Okay.
I have a question, Steve, related to the tree maintenance. How much did you decrease that in terms of a percentage?
No, I didn't decrease it. I only raised it $3,000. It probably needs raised significantly more than that.
I was
Now,
going to say,
don't-
I think that's a bit optimistic or a little too conservative, however you want to look at it. But I agree, it should be raised.
Yeah, but if I did that, I would have had to recommend a tax increase, and so I didn't.
Okay.
That's why. Now, obviously, that's something you guys could go ahead with. I was projecting that I was going to have to recommend a tax increase of at least $500,000 originally. Okay, that would have been $180-some thousand more coming into the borough. But I didn't want to do that. This is my final budget. Wow, I should celebrate. And I haven't recommended a tax increase in any of the budgets I've done. So I figured I'd stay consistent, at least for now. But that may not be something you'd be happy with, so that's why I wanted to point it out to you. Some of the things that are affecting the 2024 budget also, general fund budget, healthcare costs are increasing by 8%. Now, again, there's a couple of different personnel things that have happened, so that's not as big an impact as it might have been, but it's still an impact. We haven't got workers' comp costs yet. We estimated that based on what we've done in the past, but that will probably increase. I'll have more information on the taxable assessed value in a minute. The fee resolution is incomplete. I have to provide you with a draft in November for you to look at so you can approve a new one. And with it's a little bit tricky for me because I have to add that amendment that was made for the fee resolution into the draft of a new one. And I'm still having some technical problem with Word as far as getting things cut and pasted without having to completely retype. But I do believe the trash fee is going to have to go up by between $10 to $15 a year, with the $50 discount for seniors remain. A AA bond rating is in part based on how the general fund budget looks. And I don't think, I just some comments I've had in the past, I think people don't realize that when, even though we have money in other buckets, let's say, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's good to have a budget that is not correct, not reflective of actual spending and revenue, or that runs a deficit or has an excessive surplus even. Those are the kind of things that they're going to look at. They're not going to necessarily worry about whether or not you have money saved somewhere else. There are other notes on the Finance Committee report you can take a look at. This is what you should remember to review in the budget message. I did have an overview of economic conditions, and obviously what's going on internationally is going to affect economic conditions, affect inflation, probably fuel prices, among other things. So, that's just my take on inflation and general economic conditions. If you really want to read it, you don't necessarily have to, but those are things I think still will affect this budget. I also have a list of some new and deleted budget line items on page 5 of that budget. I have a summary of other budgets throughout the first 8 to 10 pages, like the fire fee budget, road budget, etc. The real estate tax shows a decrease based on the current taxable assessed value. So you need to take a look at page 15, but I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. The comments on the current millage rate in the budget message are on pages 6 and 15. That's some of the stuff I just went over in those last 3 slides where I talk about how I balance the budget without a tax increase. And then the library contribution, they had asked it be increased. I sent you that in an email a couple of weeks ago, and I did put in the number they requested. Now, in the past, with the library, you reduced it a little bit to take into account the fact that usually when we owe money on the RAD increase from one year to the next, that you give part of that increase to the library rather than giving it all to the Council of Governments. So that could make up the difference between a slightly lower rate and what they're asking for, but that's up to you to decide, obviously, not me. Pension, state aid, we received more state aid than we budgeted. We budgeted $130,000 in revenue for 2023, but we just got in $192,000. I kept the estimate conservative though, because after consulting with Mock and Hop, they said that we should put in a certain percentage. So I only estimated state aid for 2024 to $132,000. They thought that was realistic and a good conservative way to figure that out. The fuel fee is another source of revenue for us because other people share our fuel pumps. We get 25 cents per gallon for all non-Forest Hills users. So I'm showing you on this slide what the current price of gasoline is. You could consider raising that. There are some problems though with that probably need to be discussed in exec session if anybody wants to, because of some legal issues. And so I'm not going to discuss that now, but I'd be happy to do that if you want in an exec session coming up. So that could be one more source of some additional revenue, increasing the fee we charge for fuel. Real estate tax, I mentioned I was going to say a little bit more about this. It's based on the county's reported taxable assessed value as of October 13th. Just for reference, last year, about the same time, we had almost $2 million. Well, not almost, I guess it was about $1.5 million more in taxable assessed value. The certified value from January was also lower than what our current value is right now. The county always certifies a value officially when they're doing the tax duplicates, and that's the number they consider as our official tax assessed value as of January 13th. But as you can see throughout the year, looking at October 13th, that changes as the year goes on. So that's what this is the number I use to base how much we would collect in real estate tax this year in 2024. It does also appear, like as I mentioned before, that earned income tax will exceed our current budgeted amount. The treasurer gives you a report on that and the RAD tax and overall accounts every month. So you should take a look at that, and you can see that we are ahead of the game on earned income tax for this year as we are for RAD. Salaries are based on current contract agreements. In your budget message, about the middle of the message, I meant to put a page number on here and I forgot to do that, and I don't remember what the page number is. But I did show you non-union, part-time and full-time salaries, and the increase was 2.5%, except for a couple of salaries. That has to be reviewed by council. I know Mr. Erbaldinger wants to talk about that in exec session next week. So because it is personnel, I'm not going to go into it any further, but you might want to take a look at that chart that I have and bring that with you to the meeting next Wednesday. Oh, I'm sorry, page 24 has the non-union salary proposal. I'm sorry. See, I have Jeopardy up behind me because every time I talk about finances, I feel like I'm getting into Jeopardy, maybe double Jeopardy. Anyway, some key line items. The pension plan. Well, you can read all this. I'm not going to read it for you. And by the way, I will print this out in a PDF version and email it to you tomorrow, so you can have all these numbers in front of you.
Page 24 is not the salary.
Okay,
I'm
well
on
then I
page
was wrong.
24 of your budget message.
Yeah. Okay, then
The
it's
treasurer's
somewhere there.
report is 23. I think the salaries are 22 maybe? 21, page 21.
Okay, sorry about that. I don't know how I did that. No, I have page 23. Okay, the chart I'm referring to is on page 23 of your the budget memo I gave you today. So anyway, I will provide these numbers for this. This gives you just a rough idea of where some of the major expenditures for 2024 are compared with how they were budgeted for 2023. This is the up and down arrows on the right side are a comparison with the 2023 budget, not actual, with the budget. Budget reserve was the other thing I told you I want to talk about briefly, and the capital reserve. So budget reserve first. Council policy is to have an average of 7% of the total general fund budget. Based on the 2024 numbers I gave you of 6.9 million, that would be 485,000 plus. Our current reserve, though, is at 536,000 plus, which is 7.74% of the projected 2024 budget based on this draft. I only put in, therefore, $1,000 going to the budget reserve, and that could even be eliminated. But I wanted to put a little bit in there because we always have done that. The state again recommends that your budget reserve should be between 5 and 10%. And some now are even recommending, some state officials are even recommending having as much as 15, but our policy is 7%. And so there's one area, for example, when you're talking about putting cash back into the budget, where you could, if you wanted to, take money out of the reserve and place that money back into the budget. The capital reserve policy was set to eventually get it to $250,000. In 2024, I'm putting $0 in. Again, how I balance the budget. That's part of how I balance the budget. The capital reserve currently is 109,000 plus. That's how much is in there right now. That money can be used for anything you want, but it's a reserve supposedly for emergencies. And there is a policy council has, which you can take a look at. If you don't have that policy, let me know. But I think that was on the website with other finance policies. So you might want to take a look at that. Now, there are
Might
other.
get An example
me-
of an example of a capital reserve that might be necessary is, for example, when we had the landslide and Electric Avenue was taken out and a number of other things that came out of the capital reserve, right?
No, you had that in the corrective action budget.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
well, back when it first happened, before
Yeah.
we put the landslide stuff in there,
Yeah.
yeah, it might have been. It might have come out of that, yes.
It'd
or it
be
might have
that
come out
kind
of
of
the
thing
budget
where
reserve.
you
I'd
had
have to
an
go back and-
unexpected catastrophe of some sort.
That's what both reserves are for.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not addressing the corrective action reserve. That's the last thing I wanted to mention. That's not in my notes because I don't have that budget ready. But just so you know, in talking with the engineers from LSSE, they recommend now that we probably do want to maintain a reserve in the corrective action and increase it from year to year. There's a lot behind that. The basic reason, though, originally was that as of 2026, there was supposed to be a requirement that all municipalities were going to have to meet that could cost upwards of $1 million. And so we started putting money aside in a corrective action budget reserve to eventually get to that in 2026. And then Glenn Engineers came back and said, well, we probably don't really need to do that now. So I asked LSSE and they recommended that we go back to doing that. So I don't have that budget ready yet, but I wanted to mention that is another reserve fund that we do have. And that was their comments. You may want to talk a little bit more with LSSE about that when they're next at a meeting. That's essentially my presentation. To summarize what I gave you in the handouts that I sent to you earlier for the general fund. Whoops, I don't know if I lost you guys or not. No, there you are. Does anybody have any questions for me now? Again, you need to read all this stuff, obviously, and I know there's a lot there, but tell me anything now. Yes, Mr. Erbaldinger.
I have a question about Siemens. Siemens, basically, we were going to have the solar panels in place very early this year. So our electricity bill should go down, but we have the Siemens payment. Did you consider that? That our electricity costs?
I did, but again, I never got any feedback from Siemens when I asked them about this and the capital reserve. Capital budgets. So I just kind of ballparked something as far as that's concerned, but I didn't know for sure what to do or where to go with that. And I didn't want to take a chance that I would be wrong.
So you have lower electricity costs, but still some electricity costs.
Slightly lower. Yeah, slightly.
Okay, so maybe, but it's always better to caution on the safe side.
Yeah, that's
Second question I have, library, like, I guess we will see that in the budget, how much did we pay last year, how much we're going to pay this year, but we can look at that. But I want to talk to, first of all, I appreciate that you balance the budget without raising taxes, but I want to caution council members, anyone who wants to raise anything, pay for something extra, I think we did it in the past. If you want to add costs, you have to find a way to pay for it. Like, meaning if you want to pay $10,000 for X, you have to deduct $10,000 somewhere else. That's what I was cautioning council members. That's all I had. Thank you.
Anyone else?
The only question I have is about the zero contribution to the budget reserve. I am.
Capital reserve.
The capital reserve. I am concerned about that because that goes toward our bond rating. And I am concerned about compromising things that they evaluate when they look at our bond.
Well, that is so the reserve for capital doesn't go, that by itself doesn't go to the bond rating. It would be the overall capital improvements plan that they would look at more so than how much you have in reserve for that one item.
Okay.
It's not, I'm not saying it's unimportant, but it's not a major report. I never get asked about that whenever I have to give them a monthly report on what changes have been made. Are there any change? They give me a list of things they want me to look at and see if there's any changes, and I never really get asked about anything like that. So, anybody else have any questions or comments? If not,
I
I
have
would
a
ask,
question.
go
I
ahead.
have a question. We're making a number of software upgrades for efficiency improvement. And I think those are listed in the general fund expenditure budget. But did you successfully identify any savings from implementing those software improvements in terms of operational costs?
I know, because I wasn't sure where the savings would come from. I'm not saying, by the way, that there won't be. I'm just saying I don't know that for a fact. I don't know enough about the software. So that's another thing you might want to guide me
Angelo,
on.
do you
when you're
have any advice on that or any input on that kind of concept?
Well, in some cases, there will be some efficiencies that will be garnered from doing that. In other cases, there are things that we need to put in place for security reasons. I guess the bottom line is we won't know until this gets implemented and we have some experience with it.
Another question I have is there funding in place for staff training?
Yes.
And is it sufficient for familiarizing people with the use of these various management systems that are being put in place? Not only for the software for the integrated building management, but also the other efficiency management.
Well, I hope that the software company is going to give us training without us having to pay them more money. But there is money available for training if an employee or staff member, now I'm talking about non-police, wants to go. And we do occasionally have something that the public works crew can go to or what have you. There are also conferences, as you know, that I've gone to, that the treasurer has gone to, and others. And of course, I do have funding for council members in there to go to training, like coming up the newly elected officials course. Should anybody decide to do that with LGA, the new members, actually anybody can go, but I mean the new members mainly. That's all part of that too. It is shown in there. Anybody else? If not, again, I suggest take a look at it, please, and shoot me any questions. You should not be talking about this as a group among via email, but if you have any questions prior to the next finance committee meeting on the second Thursday of the month in November, don't forget meetings in November are different because of election day and because of the third Wednesday and all that. I have that note on my agenda, my time agenda that you also got for tonight. If you could give me them before, the idea is to try to be ready at the finance committee meeting in November to have a final preliminary budget that you can advertise as required, so that in December, because your meeting in December is earlier, you moved it up because of Christmas. In December, then you can still approve a final budget without having to wait till December 31st to do that. So please take a look at it, ask any questions you want of me, and or, or giving them in the form of an answer, and I'll try to give them to you in the form of a question. That's another reason why I have Jeopardy behind me. But anyway, if not, I'm going to go on to a couple other items
Yeah.
I have. Is that okay?
Yes, please.
All right, just real quick, we did issue the RFP for audit services. We've only had a few questions from a couple of companies. One of them, Maraduso, is well known for doing municipal finance, but they turned us down on giving us a proposal because they're short-staffed right now. I don't know if any of the other ones will. I haven't heard anything from Case Sabatini, who is our current auditor, and unfortunately, you still do not have hard copies of your audit for 2022 because they haven't provided to us yet. We did get a electronic version on the website, though. So if you want to take a look at that, that's fine. But they really technically should have had this done at least by May 1st, end of May at the latest, and they should have come to a meeting to be at least open to questions, even if you didn't have any. So I'm not sure where we're going with this, but just so you know, the RFP has been issued. There is one RFP. I'm going to mention that at committee of the whole. Never mind, forget that. Ameriserve is also asked to come to the November Finance Committee meeting, again via Zoom, because they'd like to do a pension update. So if there's no objection to that, in addition to the budget discussion for that night, I'll have that as a discussion. I forgot to mention too, going back to the budget, capital improvements plan, I gave you the complete first draft. All committees have recommended that everything that was submitted go to finance for review. If there is any review, my recommendation again is I would just keep everything in there and keep moving it into next year, because you're going to have to approve it anyway, one by one as you go through. But that's again up to you. Any last questions for me about anything I reported on? Okay, thank you. I'm finished.
Okay. Under committee business, we have a Siemens invoice for approval to be paid out of the escrow fund. Does anyone have any objections to forwarding that for the business meeting? Any objections, any concerns, questions? Okay, thank you. Then, Mr. Morris, you will put that please on the agenda for approval. There were a number of grant fund recommendations given by LSSE in their borough property report earlier this month. I wanted to inquire of the council if you are interested in pursuing any of these, because if so, we have deadlines before the end of the year, and I would like to ask about your interest in having grant funding and grant management as part of the operations of the council. I've written 4 grants so far, and we've received all 4 in my tenure here in the last 3 years in particular. Some of those will be in the implementation stage after I'm off of council. I am concerned about the monitoring, maintenance, reporting, and ongoing execution on the grants that we have, in particular the climate action grant under ICLEI, which we are collaborating with Connect for, and which I will give you an update on the climate plan before the end of the year. I have retained an intern at my own cost so far to update the data for us, and we'll give a report in November. I may request council reimburse me for what I paid $600 to the intern, but if you don't want to, I don't care. I'll pay for it anyway. But there is an issue about grant funding for park projects that were initiated by Mr. Reamer. There is they did submit the block grant fund on September 22nd for storefront improvements, and that's part of our complete streets policy. I don't know if we'll get it because they're very competitive. But there also is an idea about acquiring the Speedy Mart property to be used for a borough open parking for public parking. That would need to be supported by resolution at the November meeting. So I wanted to bring that up in case you have an interest in doing that. As far as I know, the owner of the Speedy Mart has not expressed an interest in selling the property, but he hasn't been approached seriously about it from the borough. I've had a colleague of mine from the real estate world inquire of him. He thinks he's going to put gas tanks back there in like a gas tank, pumping gas tank. And I don't think that would ever be permitted under today's conditions. But if we were to want to acquire that extra lot that he has for parking, to take the parking off of that one side of Ardmore Boulevard where there are 12 spaces, it's within the same block. We could take those 12 spaces off the street and make it a safer pedestrian experience there. So I don't know if you have interest in pursuing any of those, but I would need to know if we're going to put them on for resolutions of support letters. Marcus, do you have any opinion? Barb, any opinion about whether we should pursue grants that may require ongoing maintenance?
I mean, it
Patty?
depends how much it is.
What?
I mean, ongoing maintenance depends how much maintenance it is. You know?
No, I mean
Parking
ongoing
lots doesn't
maintenance of
sound
the
like a big
grant.
maintenance ticket.
Maintenance of the grant. That means filing reports, tracking the expenditures, overseeing the work, that kind of thing.
I mean, LSSE is pretty good at that stuff, I think.
All right. What is your opinion about the I guess the one they need information about would be the local share account for the Speedy Mart property would need a resolution letter if we were going to go forward with it. Are you interested in pursuing that or no?
I thought the Forest Hills Community Alliance was going to take a look at that.
I don't know whether they have or not. Frank, do you know whether they looked at that or not?
I'm sorry, the Speedy Mart property?
Yeah,
No, that's not something that we've been looking at all.
okay. Yeah, it could possibly be available as a local share account, a local share grant from the Community Foundation of the Alleghenies. And so it would require a resolution of support in November if they were going to file it timely by November 30th. So do you want me to ask for a resolution letter in support of such a grant, or shall we not pursue that? I don't want to have LSSE writing out a whole grant report for filing November 30th if you're not interested in pursuing the acquisition of that property.
I personally think it's a worthwhile effort.
Okay, anybody else have a comment?
Again, I mean, it sounds like it's low maintenance for us. If someone else pays for it, I'm all for it.
Okay. All right, well, I'll ask them to prepare a resolution letter. At least then we have the option to go forward or not for that one. Okay. Okay, the others are either pending or waiting. And so I just want to, point out that we do have implementation stage for a couple of things, and we're going to have to update the comp plan again, but because it's within 5 years, you can maybe review it and maybe do one, round of public comment at a borough council meeting and ask if there are any comments or suggestions for upgrade or updating, and then we can just reaffirm it. And that will take us into having reviewed it and adopted it with another 3-year cycle. I think the acting on the Arts and Culture Council will be the last thing that was in our goal statement that we needed to address. that hasn't been addressed yet. So everything else that's in there, we've at least made some incremental progress on, okay? All right, anything else people need to raise before the end of this meeting? Okay, hearing no, I would adjourn this meeting and we'll continue to the next meeting. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm good to go with committee of the whole. Mr. Overrader, if you want me to start.
I'm ready, but I don't have, I think I missed the opening the attachment, so I have to hang on. I need a second. Which email was the committee of the whole?
Mhm.
Oh, I see it. I have it. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm ready now.
Okay, just the first two things are just some notes and reminders and clarification. If I was correct, I just wanted to verify from public safety, the chief had recommended going ahead with Hoffman Kennels, correct? And so there needs to be a vote on that, if I'm not mistaken. Was there any objection to that? No? Okay, I will put that on the agenda for a vote next Wednesday. And then I mentioned last month this note about Randy Rhodes retiring, and that we need to do an RFP for a new plan council. I'm asking both Mr. Corbel and Mr. Palumbo if they have any, can help me at all with the RFP process. You did approve the fact that we should do one at the meeting last month. So I just want to let you know I am working on that, but it's slow. I don't have any examples. Campbell Durant, Mike Palumbo said they would get me an example, but I don't know. I don't remember seeing one yet. So I just want to let you know that. And of course, we'll have Mr. Corbel review. The end of the year
It would probably
reminders.
be good to have that on the agenda next week if you can do it. You know,
For-
to have
on the
a
ag-
motion next week
For what?
if you can. To do that RFP.
You already approved that.
Oh, we already did. Okay.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
can-
I've just got to construct it.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, these are just, again, under item C, just the dates of things that happen at the end of the year. A couple of key things, police pension contribution, we get the actuary to review to see if we have to authorize that. You folks are working on the citizenship award. I know that will be discussed next week in executive session. We have to advertise the budget in November. Advertise the tax ordinance if it ends up being an ordinance. If it ends up being a resolution, it doesn't need to be advertised. And you also usually do a motion either this month or next month to authorize me to solicit people to join various committees and to see if committee members whose terms are expiring are interested in re-upping. As far as outstanding items, item D, I really don't have anything new other than the fact that I did give you that rodent baiting information under ops and policy. I'm looking at the two proposals we have, and hopefully we'll pick one of them soon so that you can approve it. I don't think it'll be ready for next Wednesday though. And then also the sewer Vector truck purchase. I did have the solicitor review a draft intergovernmental cooperation agreement that Wilkins had thrown together based on the last one that we had. Wilkins is willing to move ahead. As you know, I showed you a couple of options for loans from Univest. Wilkins is continuing to look also for PNC and I think another company to see what the loan would compare to. And as I mentioned in Public Works last week, we may also want to decide to just pay for that in full, our share, from what is in our corrective action budget. So it's possible that there could be a motion to ask you to approve that next week. I'd like to see, though, if we're going to purchase this thing, that you're have at least approved by the November business meeting, if not next week. Does anybody have any questions for me on any of that?
I just want to make a comment about purchasing vehicles. You know, in the
Yeah.
past, interest being low, we like to lease things and stuff like that. But we have enough money in reserve so we can actually give ourselves a no interest loan and pay it back over 3 years and things like that. So I have the feeling with like interest so high, future police cars and things like that, we probably want to rather finance it ourselves, giving us ourselves a no interest loan rather than doing like a 10% lease, interest lease.
Okay,
Yeah, I agree with that.
That's a good idea, Marcus.
Thank you.
okay. That's all I have then, if no one has anything else for me.
All right, thank you. Next, we have solicitor's report.
Hi, everybody. Don't really have a public report tonight. Mr. Morris did put on the agenda the intergovernmental cooperation agreement regarding the Vector truck that Wilkins drafted. I am reviewing that. One other thing I will mention is under the Planning and Zoning Committee, we did receive an application to rezone the senior center from the prospective purchaser to S1 or S2, which is the same zoning that the former Atom Smasher site is. So that will be coming to you as early as next month and is a condition on the sale. So once that is approved by council, if it's approved, then the closing will occur, which should before the end of the year.
Perfect, thank you.
Yep.
All right, so committee report, I had one item. With our old system, I realize we have a new system for paving, how we create streets and things like that. But our old system, they really disadvantage alleys and low traffic roads, like the lady mentioned last business meeting. So I'm proposing to council for at least 2024 that we say 50% of our entire paving budget should go to alleys and low traffic roads, just to catch up, because we are definitely we neglected those alleys because our old system, pretty much an alley could never get a higher score compared to Filmer, for example, even if it has like less of problems. So what's council's opinion on that? 50% of 2024 paving budget should go to alleys and small
For
roads.
just 1 year.
At the moment, just for 1 year. We're only talking 24. Anyone has a concern about that?
You have a hand up. Ms. Martin has a hand up.
Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't see that. And yeah, Ms. Martin, you
Hi,
first.
I agree with that. I think it's a good idea.
Frank, you're next.
I think you need to look at all the roads as a whole and determine if any major thoroughfares need attention. The idea of paving alleys is a good idea, right? But I think you need to balance that against what roads need attention first.
I mean,
It doesn't have to be, in other words, it doesn't have to be a 50% cutoff. I mean, just depending. Also, while we're on the subject, have we thought about finding something to replace what we initially used when we initiated the program? So we used to use something called Paverware. Have we perhaps started to explore another option to help us grade the roads?
I think LSSE uses something different. So I think they do have something.
I have a comment on that, if
Yes,
that's okay.
Yeah,
They've given us a draft proposal, which Jimmy's reviewing, and I think it's going to go to you folks soon, but he wanted to make sure that there was nothing missing. They did an evaluation of the roads on that proposal. So it's about 35 pages long, I think. I'm not sure what they're using, but they do have an evaluation completed in draft form.
Cecil.
Yes, I agree with you, Marcus. I think that it would be helpful if we were to put that as a limit, as a maximum, that we're not going to spend more than 50% on these alleys and roads that have been neglected simply because they don't get enough traffic. I was driving on some of those roads and was surprised at how bad they are, especially when I compared them to other roads that I've driven and walked that we've recently repaved. Also, I think it would be helpful for everybody to at least consider that perhaps we split that 50% into half of that money could go towards alleys and half could go towards these low traffic roads that just have been neglected over the years.
Anyone else? I mean, we don't have to on the cent or dollar, we really, it's not like, I don't plan to do an ordinance for that or anything like that, but we need to look onto, like, into LSSE proposal and really favor alleys and small roads.
So Marcus, I have a question for Steve Morris.
Mhm.
The analysis provided by LSSE, Steve, was that done using some sort of an evaluation software? Was that just done by field surveys?
I think they did mainly field service, but I'm not 100% sure. I haven't had a chance to really sit down and look at it. We just got it a few days ago, maybe last week, something like that. So,
One comment.
Jack,
I think I'd like to see that report before you settle on a particular percentage. Some of these alleys were concrete, and would we end up spending almost? How much of that percentage would we end up cleaning up one alley? I'd like to see the consequences of that. How much would we get for that 50%, or would we be
yes,
devoting it
I
all
think
to
we
one
have
or
to
two
look at the
small
list.
alleys?
I agree. We have to look
Yeah.
at the list, but
Yeah.
I think it should be like a goal to spend significantly more money on alleys and small roads compared to the past 10 years. I'm not saying we need to have exactly 50-50, but we should really favor small roads and alleys. But we should look at the proposal first. I agree. Okay, so next, Bob, you want to talk about Westinghouse Lodge railing replacement.
Yes, did you all get a chance to look at the estimate that was sent?
Which is slightly higher than but we said, I think we are good with that. We don't need a new motion, I think.
No, so should we add that for approval next week on Wednesday?
I think we already did. I'm not sure. Steve Corbell, we said it was like, I think it was like a little bit less money, but we said we will be flexible. I don't know what we have to do.
Yeah.
So we have to have a new motion.
I think that makes most sense.
Okay, we should do it then. Because I think it was like $20,000 more than what we approved.
Correct. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, we should definitely do a motion then.
Okay. Community garden. I think.
Excuse me, I had a question.
Okay.
This is about the railing.
Yeah.
So there's some information that is missing that we don't have, and I don't want us to get into a situation where we're buying something that we're going to regret. The company that was recommended has a variety of railing options. We should have at least a diagram or a picture of what the railing is that's being recommended. They have a picket type. They have all sorts of inserts that go into those railings. Also, they have ADA compliant handrails for going up and down the steps. So I think before we finalize anything, we need to get the exact specifications and the exact nomenclature of what's being provided. What was in the quote looked like something that the bidder probably ad-libbed on what he was referring to. So I would like to get some more information.
Maybe we can have that as an attachment next week so we can see it, pictures. Like, I don't want to delay it. I don't want to make like a major case out of it.
No, but if we get the wrong product, then we're going to be sorry, because if we get the open railing all around.
I mean, it's supposed to be a railing, there's a handrail. I don't think we will have a picket, but yes, I think I'm fine. They should send us pictures of it.
Well, yeah, they have like 20 different types.
All right, they should send us pictures of what they propose, I guess.
I'll ask LSSE to be ready for next Wednesday
Yes.
on that.
I guess Angela, you have a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, I made you skip the community garden thing.
Oh, sorry. No, I think it makes sense. It's an empty lot. What do you have to do on that? I think. Is council in favor of it, or?
Yeah, you have to decide whether you're okay with it. You did approve a while back a not you folks, I think it was a previous council, a resolution that allowed you to participate in the county's program on vacant property. And so this is one of the things that they would do. And if you're okay with it, they would still complete more paperwork on it. It was I'm trying to find it. I had it, I brought it with me, and I don't know what I did with it now. It was resolution 1226. And you also signed an agreement with the county on vacant property recovery. Would be part of that. So I don't believe this guarantee. What I believe has to happen is you say it's okay. They then should be coming to the council to a meeting to explain to you what their plan is and give you more detail than what they have in that application.
All right.
Barb has her hand up.
Ah, you have a, yeah, you have a.
I didn't know at what point council would find out. For instance, on this property, is it an issue or a concern if there's back taxes? Are we responsible for those, or would the people acquiring the property?
Barb, this is Steve Corbel. They would actually be acquiring the property, free and clear of those taxes. This is a program that is designed to put the properties back on the tax rolls. So,
Oh, thank you. Okay.
yep.
So I think, we, like Steve said in the past, we did approve that. So I think, is everyone okay with moving forward with that? Okay. Okay, now, Angelo, you have a bunch of stuff.
Yes, I will try to run through these very quickly. The first one is employee safety. At our last meeting, there were some issues that were brought up about employee safety that Ms. Martin brought up about folks from particularly Public Works driving on the road with unauthorized vehicles like lawnmowers, also doing things like picking up logs that should have been disposed of by the tree removal service. And so it seemed like everybody kind of shrugged about that and just moved on. But I think that's a real issue, because if we don't address it, I guess we have the issue of how many people can we afford to have on disability? And that's what we're heading for. We're heading for somebody getting seriously injured or worse. So I think that needs to be addressed. This may not be the committee to do that, or even the venue to do that, but it does need to happen. The next item is Airbnb inspection follow-up. There was an issue which Mr. Corbel's associate was to have sent a letter to an individual, one of our residents who had a property. And if it's okay, I would like to follow up with Mr. Corbel maybe tomorrow to discuss that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. Third item, executive session. I believe we have a potential problem with confidentiality, holding executive sessions in the council chamber. I would rather not discuss it here. I just bring this up that we need to take a look at the environment before we continue to do anything further. I will speak to Mr. Erbaldinger further about that.
I mean, we could put it on executive, I will put it on the agenda for executive session.
Yes. Deer carcass pickup report, based on our deer management recommendations, I would like to recommend that we have a deer carcass pickup report under the Public Works reports that are provided. That way we can ensure that we're getting a a report on a recurring basis. Term appointments for committees. We went through several iterations of this, especially for the Environmental Advisory Council when we redid the ordinance, that the term appointment should be from the time the person is appointed and for 3 years hence. We seem to continue to arbitrarily make their appointments terminate on February of after 3 years. So I think that just creates a lot of confusion. I would like to see us go to appointing people from the date that they're appointed, and their expiration date is 3 years from that appointment date, not continually changing. Does that, anybody have any questions about that? I thought we had that resolved with the.
Steve is waving his
Oh,
hand.
Steve has
Mr. Morris?
Steve has a question.
We changed it to February 28th because it was more confusing to have it throughout the year where somebody was up in March, somebody was up in the middle of April, somebody was up at the end of April, somebody was up in early June. So I suggested to council years ago that we make them all the same so that they would conclude in February 28th. And the idea being that if you're appointed for a new term, you're going to probably be appointed at the end of February, or probably be appointed in February rather. And if you're appointed to fill somebody's term, that means you're going to complete their term as it is. Now you can do however you want, but realize that you have your manager essentially the one who's dealing with these things and trying to keep all this stuff in order, instead of dealing with larger things, you know.
Well,
and I think that you really need to have some kind of consideration there too, because that just confuses things even more.
Well, the consideration should be that we don't want everybody expiring at the same time. We have enough trouble getting people to apply for these positions. So if you have everybody their term expiring at the same time, that creates a problem.
But everybody
Plus,
doesn't.
Well, plus you in some of the rules, we had originally suggested that those terms be staggered. So if you appoint 3 people this year and they all expire at the same time, you run the risk of losing all those folks, all at once instead of staggering them.
If you have 7 people on a board, for example, then you might have 2 that expire 1 year, 3 that expire another year, 2 more that expire the year after that. I mean, it's staggered from that point of view. You don't have all 7 all of a sudden ending their term at the same time.
Yeah, so it's now inconsistent with the ordinance that we just passed, which states that it didn't give that caveat that they would be expired on a certain date in February. So either we have to change the ordinance or we have to amend that ordinance to
I
state
mean,
that.
for environmental advisory.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's one committee. That's how you want to do it for one. I mean, that's fine. We haven't appointed anybody, I don't think, since that was passed, have we?
Yes.
No.
Several.
Pike.
And the latest was Mr. Pike, who was already as an alternate, and then he got his date changed when he got appointed for full time. So
His date was the same as what his alternate, I thought, his alternate expiration was. I thought it was just moved up.
I would just like us to be consistent. That's all.
Okay.
But anyway, unless there's objections, I think we should do it that way. But No objections, okay. The next item is status of the pickleball sound study. Do we have any idea if that's gone through?
I guess you should have asked that last week when LSSE was there. You can probably ask per email.
Right, well, that was,
They're supposed to do it.
right, but have they been told to do it?
Yeah, I saw that.
Okay,
So maybe just follow up with an email with Kevin.
okay. Next item. There are a number of solicitor items that I think at least I have lost track of as to what is pending and what has been completed. As far as amending ordinances and so forth, I don't know if Mr. Corbel has a listing of all those things, but again, if I could discuss that with you tomorrow, so maybe we can make sure that they're all straight. We haven't missed anything.
Yeah, that's totally fine. I was planning on providing those updates and ordinances in advance of the executive session next week, right? Not for public discussion. Yep.
Thank you. I just mentioned this is another item, Atlantic Avenue parking restrictions. This came up when there was a problem with Coke Park, having a lot of folks there. Resident asked about that, and this didn't get to the level of asking for a traffic study from LSSE. And I don't know if Mr. Corbel has any idea whether we actually have to do a traffic study to make parking only on one side of the street, or if that does need a traffic study.
No, you typically don't need a traffic study for that. Usually just for stop signs, speed limits, those sort of traffic control devices.
Okay, thank you.
Or
The next two items, sidewalk parking enforcement and commercial truck parking enforcement. We've had a number of situations where there's been resident complaints, and I think what we need to do is enforce no parking on sidewalks and enforce no commercial truck parking on residential streets. I would like to see that happen. I don't know if Mayor Porco could speak with the chief to see if that can take place, so we don't continue to have problems with residents complaining.
So we need to dive into that a little bit further. Right now, we have, I mean, so basically, if you bring home a commercial truck from your work, are you suggesting that we just, if you're parked on the street, that's a ticket?
Yes, it's in our ordinance. There's to be no commercial truck parking,
Does that include in your driveway?
not in the driveway, only on the street.
There's some people in Forest Hills that don't have off-street parking available to them. So we're gonna have to, I think we're gonna have to spend a few minutes discussing that. We don't have to do it now. We can take it offline.
And what you think about commercial truck? Do you mean like an 18-wheeler or like a van?
Yeah, that's the other
van.
question,
I mean,
right? So if somebody drives, if somebody's given a company pickup as part of their compensation, right? And they have no off-street parking available to them, I think that's a little bit much to kind of find them or cite them every night for parking outside their house. I hear what you're saying, and I think I understand the spirit of what you're asking, right? Certainly the blocking of sidewalks is inappropriate, and we have ordinances in place that prohibit that. But
I have a comment about the sidewalk sign too. Sidewalk is not sidewalk. I see like a neighbor down my street. There is pretty much no sidewalk on Forest Hills Road, except that house has one sidewalk for one house, and that guy is parking on it. But I can see someone not allowed to be parked like in front of Barb's house, because Paddock Road has a continuous sidewalk all the way along the road. there's a difference if you have like a single house sidewalk, it's pretty much like a concrete parking pad in my mind. You know?
Yeah, so,
I
so,
think we need to, I think, Angelo, you need to take it back to public safety. I think there's nothing we have to look into. that.
Actually,
right, and the
Barb
re-
has her hand up.
Oh,
Bob,
yeah,
you-
I just wanted to finish a comment here, is that I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you. But I think if we need to identify what is this, what constitutes a sidewalk, and when people can park or not park on it. If it's a parking pad, then that makes a difference. And I realize that some people just have a small piece of concrete in front of their house, and that may make a difference. But I think then we need to examine the ordinance and make sure that we either apply it uniformly or we have to change it to accommodate those different
Bob, you had a
situations.
comment.
Yeah, Barb, Ms. Martin.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to say it would be nice to have to look at all the different scenarios for this, because it's confusing to our residents, and sometimes people think, oh, my neighbor can do this and I can't. I would just wish we had a more uniform approach so that it seemed fair to all our residents.
I agree, but I think, like Frank said, it needs a little more homework. It should go back to public safety.
so-
Jack,
Yeah, I'm not sure I would say back to public safety, because I think we're, and no offense to any of us, but we're lay people here making our own perceptions of what the ordinances out there actually do and do not permit. I think the wiser thing is to have someone, perhaps Mr. Corbel, look at the ordinances that are relevant to these things. Are they consistent? I mean, and are they clear? And if they aren't, we need to clean them up. But for us to make our own judgments that this is a sidewalk and that's a parking pad is not a good route to take. So I'm not sure public safety is the next place to take this. You might also want to look into the ordinances that did address on-street parking. At one point, the definition was any vehicle with a commercial license plate. I don't know if that got removed in the 90s or not. There was talk about doing that, but that might be other thing to look at, because some of these ordinances were fought about in the 90s, and so we may have stuff that's just completely out of date, or we're totally unaware of at this point. Thanks.
Mr. Watkins, did you have something?
I think that it would benefit everyone in Forest Hills if we were just consistent with whatever we were doing. I've seen people get cited because they had a few friends over, and then directly across the street, there's another person that routinely parks his car on the street. I drove to the Aldi's, and as I was just about to get there, I saw cars parked on the sidewalk on Ardmore Boulevard. I thought that we had resolved that. So we need a coherent, consistent plan, or whatever we're going to do. It's got to be consistent for everyone in the borough.
again, we can't do anything tonight. We have to do more research. Doesn't matter where we do it.
Okay. I'm just raising everyone's awareness here.
Okay.
And then a final thing, I know there was an accident with the Forest Hills Monument at Avenue B at Ardmore Boulevard. I had never heard anything about that, and I was just curious as if that was being replaced.
Are you talking about the arc? Getting
No.
hit?
The logo that had Forest Hills.
Yeah, there was an automobile accident that wiped out the sign that says "Welcome to Forest Hills" on the right hand
okay.
side.
Mr. Morris.
Steve,
We received a check of, I want to say just under 12,000, maybe it was under $11,000 from the insurance company for that. It's about $1,500, $1,600 short of what's needed to pay for a full sign. But Jim Thielecker has been in touch with the company that replaced it for us last time when the other one was hit. And that's the estimate they came up with, but we did receive a check for that. We're just working out a couple other things with the insurance company.
All right,
Okay, thank you. That's all I have. Thank you for indulging me.
thank you. All right, next we have Walt. You have 2 items on the agenda.
Hi guys, how are you? Just wanted to touch base. I was approached by a company, a campaign, national fitness campaign, to consider putting a fitness pad in one of our parks. This is something, there's one in McCandless, there's another one in, I believe it's Chippewa. Those are the 2 most local, but these are a concrete pad with the park padding that they put over top of it, with several different workout apparatus on it. I can share my screen, just give you a brief. I sent it to Marcus and I also sent it to Barb. They looked at it and told me that there was definite interest with that. I'll just share my screen real quick and then
Yeah, please.
go over and talk to you about that here. Can everybody see that?
Yeah.
Okay, so bottom line, what it is they're standing on the pad there. And the National Fitness Campaign is nationwide, with working with these various sponsors to put these pads in various parks. They've already done a assessment of the amount of fitness through our parks and the trail system between the parks. I can't share that with you tonight. That's sitting on my desk, unfortunately, with the it's a separate website that they go through, but I can get that to you so that it shows you, as people are working out and have the apps on their phone, it reports back their information to various companies that run through the National Fitness Campaign, and they're able to check with. The fitness court itself, you'll see that in the corner here. It sits in, my thought process was that we could look at the Forest Hills Park. That's where they believe is the highest fitness traffic coming through the area. And needless to say, that's where they believe is the best thing. But the park itself ranges all the way up to $237,000, depending on what you choose for your workout apparatus, how much you want to get into the artwork and design of the actual unit itself. And that breaks down further down into this category. That gives you a little bit closer look. This wall right here is something that can be custom made with art for your community, and you can use local artists, or you can pick artwork from theirs. Like I said, there's one of the custom designs that was done at a local park in the country. But they work with you every step of the way to try to obtain funding for it. At the same time, providing various marketing materials for us to work to try to find additional funding for it. There's a grant, $30,000 grant that they assure me that we would qualify for as part of the process. Obviously, matching funds play a part as well with any of these types of things, but and sponsor support. One thing I did is, once I had talked to Barb and Marcus and knew there was some interest, I started reaching out to some people I know. We have a local Pittsburgh Steeler that lives in our community, that his 3 kids are part of my swim program, and I reached out to him to assess interest as a resident, also as someone who is in touch with many of these sponsors that we would look to obtain to try to build this wall and this court. And he seems to believe that it's something worth looking into. His comment was, if anybody wants to know who it is, it's Mike Logan. He lives in our community and grew up in West Mifflin and McKeesport, played football for the Steelers for many years. And needless to say, he believes and is going to talk to the Batch Foundation, which obviously he played with Charlie Batch, as well as several other Steelers. Chris Edmonds went to Woodland Hills. I believe still lives in the borough as well, and is heavy into fitness, and is also going to reach out to several other people that he knows and is linked in with, because that's what he does at this point. He does public speaking and a lot of stuff for the Steelers. But like I said, now we're getting into the costs, and you get an idea of what's involved with it. And if you want me to stop, I can stop. I'm trying to get through this as quickly as I can for you guys. I know it's been a long meeting for you guys, but just wanted to touch base, with you, get some feedback from you on that. And like I said, one of the other things I was looking after talking to Mike Logan was that, UPMC, as an example, rents the Westinghouse Lodge office, 2 to 3 times a year. Either themselves or AHN, who carries our insurance policies, to see about, their interest. Because as I found when I was researching several of these sites, AHN was involved, I believe, in the one in McCandless, if I'm not mistaken. So it's something that, with fitness being a top priority, these Blue Cross, Blue Shields, and stuff like that are getting involved with it in some way, shape, or form. So.
Question. I have a
Go
question.
ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Would this be anything we would have to fund or match, or does it become our obligation to maintain only?
I'm sorry, to make.
Do we have to maintain it only, or will they pay for the whole thing, or do we have to contribute to the cost?
Well, I mean, obviously, depending on how many sponsors we can get, obviously they're not paying for the entire thing. They're the only thing they promised is a $30,000 grant to go towards that. The rest is at that point either matching funds and or sponsored in some way, shape, or form. That's what I would look to do, is get as many sponsors involved as we possibly could, major sponsors, and local sponsors as well on a smaller scale, but try to get as much of it paid for as we possibly could, through the organizations that are out there. And like I said, if you look at some of these walls, and I can send you the information so you can, further detail it. They have, I started with a 3-minute video that I was able to view and get an idea of the entire process. I then sat down with James David from National Fitness Campaign to do a longer presentation of the entire process of how they walk you through, what they provide for you, how they get involved to try to make this happen as well. I'm not gonna lie to you. I mean, they're trying to sell these and get these put out there in various communities. But at the same time, if you look at our walking trails through and the exercise stuff that were put in years ago in the parks, they're dilapidated. They're starting to fall apart. Very few people use them at this point, simply because of their condition. But when you look at the walking trails and the foot traffic through the parks, it's fairly heavy. And that's one of the reasons why I gave them 2 locations to just look at as far as areas, and one of those being the Westinghouse Park area and fields and what have you, as well as the Forest Hills Park. And it was a landslide as far as how much traffic went through the trails of Forest Hills Park and the area surrounding that when they came back to me, they came back very quickly saying, hey, we're sure that we can get the $30,000 grant for you based off of the amount of traffic that you have going through there. And when they say amount of traffic, remember, they're tracking fitness apps. These are people that are working out. They have these apps on their phone in some way, shape, or form, and are checking in via their watch and cycle for, whether it be pulse, whether it be heart rate, whatever, and they're tracking those all. This all comes with these are all part of that and would come with its own app. But like I said, when I reached out to garner some interest, there were several places that, were interested. And when you consider the number of yoga classes and or various fitness, Pilates and what have you, that we're renting out our Westinghouse Recreation Center and Pool Lodge for various items through the past, since I started in February, there's a definite interest in the community for fitness programs and what have you, you can, at that point, we could definitely look into, having classes where we have a fitness instructor that, whether it's a boot camp of some sort or what have you, that we could look to put classes together into something like this. But like I said, it's the very early stages. It's something that, I wanted to put out there to see, your thoughts. Like I said, I shared it with Marcus and Barb right away, just to get an idea. But like I said, it's something that I wanted to get feedback and see if we should continue to pursue it.
Does anyone has a question? Cecil? You're mute.
Do you have any information through these apps on what the usage on the facilities are a year after they're put in, 3 years after they're put in, 5 years after they're put in?
I personally do not know. I mean, I can check with them to see how much information, detailed information is in what they're looking at to make their determination on the site location. But I don't have those details at this time. Like I said, I have a follow-up appointment with them in early November.
If we
Yeah,
could get any response anywhere near what we're getting with the participation in the pickleball court, I'm all for it. But we don't know. It's a big blind spot.
Anyone,
as far as I
Jack.
can see.
I think, Jack, you want to say something?
Yeah, I have a couple questions on it. One is, I'd like to find out what that would do to our insurance. We know just the issues with having children's playgrounds and what that does to our insurance. What's something like this going to do? The other question that comes to mind, and it's quite relevant with the dog park after a couple years, we'll get the grant money to pay for some part of this, and in 5 years, 6 years, and 10 years, it has to be maintained and restored or rebuilt, and a new council 10 years from now is on the hook for this. And it sounds a little bit faddish to me, so I wonder in 10 years where we'd be with it. And every time we do something like this, many of them are good ideas, but we have to look very carefully at the consequences, particularly in maintenance, and then for the insurance that's involved. So I'd go very hesitantly further with this.
I mean, I actually told Walt the same thing. We need to know about maintenance, but at the moment, we also need to know how much money we have to pay. But I think it's an interesting idea, and we should explore it at least a little bit. But maintenance is a big concern. I agree with you, Angelo.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always good to get new ideas and to get some other types of programs that we can use in the borough. But I think the first thing we really need to do is to look at all our parks, all of the recreation facilities, and have basically a comprehensive plan on how those things are being maintained, what we need to do to upgrade some of the playground equipment and that sort of thing. I know some of that is in process as we speak, but I think that would be, to me, a better thing to do at the moment.
Anyone, Patty?
Yeah, I just want to say one thing. People go to parks because they're parks. They have an interest in having open space, natural spaces to walk in and to be in. I'm concerned that we are not putting very much in the way of maintenance and upgrading and ongoing care of the natural environment of our parks. And adding more gadgets and gimmicks doesn't necessarily take care of that basic amenity of the natural infrastructure of the tree canopy. I see that we are not putting a lot into the budget for replacement of trees, getting arborist services for doing other things and cutting down things that might be dangerous. I think it's important that we look at what it is that our parks are supposed to be providing and see that we can provide those basic things. I mean, clearly improving the trails, making them more safe, more even would be a great addition, but making sure that you don't have trees leaning over them and that you have shaded areas with good mature trees growing and replacing ones that are needing replaced, to me would be a very good investment. I don't know how we're gonna get it into the budget. I don't know if anybody funds that. I don't think there are any exotic named people who care about maintaining tree canopy, but I think it's something to consider.
But what you just said, Patty, I think has nothing to do with Walt's proposal. It's in, it's.
Well, if
parks.
you're looking at what you spend money on and what we need to insure and what we need to do in maintaining, we already have an asset that we're allowing to degrade, and putting equipment in it doesn't necessarily help that from happening. I'm
Anyone
sorry
else?
if it's
Yeah.
irrelevant, but it's relevant.
If I can follow up.
Yes.
Actually, I think Patty's comment is pretty relevant. I think we ought to think about, before we add other things to the parks, I hate to use this term, but what's a mission for our park? I'm not sure our park is supposed to be a replacement for Planet Fitness. Park is an open space to gather together and enjoy nature to some degree. And I wonder if there are other places available for our residents to pursue something like this. And, you know, if we pull resources away from keeping up the nature part of our parks, and put it into this, I think our parks will suffer. So I think Patty's comment's very relevant.
So just to summarize what I feel like council is saying, let's say Walt can get it fully financed by external party. We maybe have to sweep it twice a year. You are against it? Did you hear that right?
I'm sorry, you got,
Like I said, if Walt would get it fully financed and we have to maybe, like, maintenance is all what we have to do is sweep it twice a year, and you would be against it. Like all of you, I mean.
You'd have to do
I
more
would have
than just,
serious questions about it. Yes, this is Jack.
Yeah.
I'd have serious questions about it.
it would require more than just sweeping it twice a year, but I do have some concerns as well. And I
Basically, you're against Walt researching it further, it sounds like. I just want to clarify that.
I don't think it's right for us at the moment.
Okay. I mean, I thought if maintenance is low, we don't have to pay for it, it's a good idea. But it sounds like the majority of you is against it. Okay. So I don't want Walt to spend any more time on that without, council being at least interested, but it sounds like you're not interested. Right. So Walt, you have something else?
I'm
Film
not sure.
project.
I'm not sure what else got put on the agenda, to be honest with you.
No, you said film project, like, I don't know, some film, but I don't know what I mean.
Oh, I'm
Film
sorry. Well, I was approached by an organization, independent filmmaker that wants to use Forest Hills Park to film a movie, independent film about, basically it's a gymnast who gets injured and suffers some mental anguish over that injury and not being able to compete, and basically how they're looking to get her back into the right mental frame and recover from that. So they were asking permission to use our parks, our Forest Hills Park, for filming of certain scenes. And at that point, I asked Steve the right process to go through and what to do. So,
Frank, you have a hand up.
I was just going to recommend to circle back to the proposal that Walt brought forward rather than stick a pin in this. Why don't we just refer this to the appropriate committee and maybe explore this a little further before making a final decision?
Right. I think
I mean,
Bob
this-
actually has
this-
to leave. It would be Bob's project, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, does anybody oppose to just giving it some further? I mean, I feel like we're trying to make a call here and kind of do it in a quick fashion. This is actually, I think, something that would benefit the community and would probably be welcomed in the community. I just think it merits a little further discussion before we just decide to table it for the time being.
and let me just say this real quick. I mean, and most of you at this point know me well enough to know that, like, if I showed you my phone right now, I probably have 500 pictures on my phone of various things throughout the parks. the paths, the pole, the Westinghouse Lodge, the Forest Hills Lodge, that, you know, need various things from us in some way, shape, or form. So, you know, what you guys are saying, but does not fall on deaf ears when it comes to me. I take great pride in the fact that, you know, you guys trusted me in putting me in the position you did, and I will be doing everything possible to fix some of those items as we go. I mean, just as an example, you know, just the other day, this morning, as a matter of fact, Barb reached out to me about the merry-go-round at the Forest Hills Park, and the concern that it's cordoned off right now for safety purposes, and you know what, you know, asking me questions as to why and what the thought process were. And Jimmy and I talked about it. We had a couple of complaints about some sharp edges. We found a weld that had popped on it, and it needs to be re-welded. At the same time, we have a new merry-go-round that is sitting down at the Public Works that we can move into that site. But obviously, we're coming into the winter months, and add to that the fact that we've written the Greenway grant with hopes of getting that will fix the bridge, the pavilion, and provide playground equipment to that park if we should get it. And so it doesn't make sense to then turn around, put what we already have sitting in the garage in that site if we could then, you know, turn it around. So, you know, from the cost management standpoint, I get it. I mean, I'm the first one to tell you, I think Jimmy's short-staffed and everything they have to do. And you know, I would love someone designed specifically for recreation, but at the same time, I understand what you guys have to deal with, and you know how you have to approach it. And so I, you know, by all means, I sympathize and I understand it. You know, like I said, at the same time, my goal would be to, you know, get as much funding in place for this. At that point, approach you and say, hey, I've got these parties interested, and you know, this is where we stand, and make that decision then. But at the same time, like, I grew up in Forest Hills Park. I played baseball on that field, you know, most of my young life. And, you know, like I said, for me, it's a very important place. You know, I'm not looking to tear down a bunch of trees to put this pad in place or anything like that. You know, I have a thought process in mind of where I would like it, but I don't know whether it would fit. So it's something that before I garnered any of that and started spending time and effort on something like that, like I said, I wanted to get your interest. I understand it. So.
Right, Frank, your hand is still up. Is it old or?
Nope, sorry, I asked my question. I'll lower it.
All right. So the film project, what's going on with that?
I'm sorry, you cut out, Marcus.
No, I mean, like, we kind of need to go back to it.
Okay,
I
okay.
think I read the email. It said at nighttime. I don't think it's any interference. They would pay some fees. I think it's fine in my mind. Anyone else opposed to it, or I think it's fine to support something like that.
I agree.
All right. Next, Airbnb. I think, Jack, it's from you, from Ops Policy.
Yeah, I think this just goes straight to Mr. Corbel. Very quickly, there is the ordinance for Airbnb says you can only rent them for 30 days plus. We have a resident who's been doing that renting, and the way it's structured, they have to have someone come in from the code and check the facility out between each group coming in. So theoretically, he has to do this 12 times a year if he rents it out for 30 days. But then he also has to have a dead time between when one group leaves. He gets code enforcement to come in and give him an okay and rent it out again. And I think I proposed that was probably an inadvertent error when we put the ordinance together, and we should amend the ordinance to maybe an inspection once a year is what I was going to suggest. Mr. Corbel?
Yeah, I don't think it was inadvertent. I think it was designed to, make that type of use in the borough, a little more difficult to deal with. In fact, I think we rezoned it so it's only available in the mixed use overlay district unless it existed prior to the amendment. And those would be grandfathered in. So, which we do have some of those, but we also have ones that we've been chasing since earlier this year with notices of violation, et cetera, that are ongoing.
Okay.
I
actually,
can
with the
look at it
conditional-
and we could talk about an exec next week.
Okay, all right, let's do that, because I think Angela has some input because it was a resident that talked to him about this.
Yeah, okay, sure.
Yeah, okay, let's put that
Where-
in the exec session.
Okay, perfect.
Good.
I put it on the list for executive session. I don't think we have anyone to report on environmental advisory council or tree and shrub. Okay, so anything else? Right, so I think we're good for tonight. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.